Let's talk about data centers. I feel like right now they are the big topic in a lot of smaller towns and communities across the United States because there's a huge demand for data centers in a lot of places because of the increased demand by AI, which may or may not be a bubble. We'll have to see. Time will tell. But with that demand for data centers, there are a lot of people, a lot of companies out there looking for places to build them. And I want to first off say that I think data centers are a necessity. I think they need to exist somewhere, but I think they're a necessity in the same way that landfills are a necessity. There is a time and place for where they go and when they go. But just putting them down anywhere does have negative implications, and it is something that we should not be so hasty to do. And the problems that I have right now are mostly around data center developers or companies that are developing these buildings. They push a lot of what I'll call propaganda or partial facts to convince people that it's all A-OK and there's no issues. So I'm going to go through some of those facts, and hopefully it gives you a little bit more of a holistic view on all the problems. I also want to emphasize I am somebody who's a little bit more technically savvy. I do have a degree in electrical engineering. I am an architect with software. I have 10 years of experience in a corporate environment, 15 years of experience developing and deploying software to cloud environments that are hosted in data centers. I have not built my own data center. Very few people will have done that as a regular hobbyist. But as a career, I have worked with them quite a bit. So let's talk about these concerns because there's quite a few of them that are usually brushed off by these developers. The first one is electrical costs or utility costs, but we'll talk about the different utilities in a couple different ways. But electrical costs, point blank period, electrical costs will go up. This is simple supply and demand. If there is more demand in the way of a data center, there will be more costs to electrical costs. You'll have to pay more for your bill. That'll be because there's less electricity go around, so you have to pay more in order to get a bigger slice of the pie. And even if you pay the same amount per electrical unit, per kilowatt hour, you will also be supporting more complex infrastructure. Now, there are two things that these data centers companies will go out and say. They'll say, well, first of all, you have a public utility commission that negotiates with your power company. So for power company, we'll just do, I don't know, this is supposed to be like electrical lines or something. I don't know. Weird, doesn't matter. Your power company will negotiate through a public utility commission to get you, the regular ratepayer, a deal. This is for your regular houses and how much they negotiate for their power draw. And they'll make sure that your rate is only $1 per kilowatt hour or something. I actually haven't looked at my electrical bill. I have no idea how much a kilowatt hour costs, which is, I should do that, but it's too late now. We're already down this path. And these data center companies will say it's not our responsibility to negotiate your rates with your utility company. And I'd say, yeah, I know. But if you're going to plop yourself down there and double the demand, I'm going to have to pay more because I know supply and demand. It's basic economics. So my rate or my cost might go up to $2 per kilowatt hour, which means I'm going to be paying way more for my same electricity. Now, the other thing that these companies will say when they're developing new data centers is they'll also say, we pay for the infrastructure and the build out and the new electricity. So that did I spell that wrong? I did. No, I did. Close enough. They pay for the infrastructure and all the new costs to building it out so that us as ratepayers are protected. They will tell us that they pay for all these other things and they're covering the costs of making our electrical grid more robust and developing more electricity. And that's partially true. And the reason I say partially is there are white papers and studies put out there. There's one in particular by Harvard that I will cite at the bottom of this video that states that this statement that public utility companies are supposed to protect ratepayers, and that this statement that almost every data center developer will put out there is unilaterally false. It is something that data centers rely on as misinformation to convince people to build data centers in their areas. And in fact, they state that there are too many loopholes for electrical companies to be able to shield us from the costs from the data centers. The electrical companies are a for-profit company, and if they can find a way to charge ratepayers more money, they want to because they want to make their profits. And on top of that, these data centers, they'll say, "Oh, we work out a deal that will pay for electrical costs no matter what. If we're going to use 800 kilowatt hours, or if we're going to use 800 kilowatts, then we will use 800 kilowatts no matter what. Or is that the right kilowatts? Yeah. Megawatts? I'm sorry, megawatts. Maybe it's megawatts. If they say we're going to use 800 megawatts and say they only use 700, they'll say, well, we'll pay for the full 800. But they're negotiating where their costs are maybe $0.7 per kilowatt hour. So then on top of the fact that not only are we likely going to pay for some of this additional cost, or because there's additional demand, we're going to be paying closer to $2 per kilowatt hour because of these loopholes, we are also going to be shouldering more of the burden of maintaining the infrastructure because our share of paying per kilowatt hour is going to be much higher than the share of the data centers. And so even though the data centers are paying for their portion of what they've negotiated for in terms of energy, the dollar amount contribution that I, as a regular homeowner, is going to put towards the mechanisms and the infrastructure to support that is going to go up long term. And so, I'm not an economist. I'm not an accountant. I can't really talk to the numbers too much here other than what I've shown here. But I will link a white paper put out by Harvard that explains this in very good detail, that basically just says these data center developers are straight up lying to your face, and you really need to better understand how this works because they're using this as propaganda to get in the door. Okay, so now let's talk about water, because water is a similar issue in the same way that public utility, it's something that gets consumed by data centers, but there's an additional disingenuous statement that these companies will also say is they'll say modern data centers, just to shorten that to DC, use less. Maybe it'll only use 100,000 gallons per day instead of the projected 1 million. And that might be true, but again, usually when they're looking to build, they're going to make promises that they're not going to keep. They're going to say 100,000 gallons a day, that's all we're going to use. But that's a promise, and it costs us a lot of money to be this modern. I'm doing air quotes with my fingers, but you can't see them. Well, I can do it here, though. This is going to cost a lot of extra money. If you don't hold them to account and put in contracts with them, here's the max amount of water you can use. And if you go over that, you pay penalties or you shut down for the day. Unless you put contracts in place that enforce this aggressively, this is a promise that they're not going to keep. And so this is another thing that frustrates me. Then on top of that, you have, again, the same issue with the electrical utilities. Water utilities also have additional infrastructure costs that are then passed on to the consumers. And I have some more studies I can share there as well for those. But I don't want to get too much into utility stuff because at the end of the day, I'm just saying that it's propaganda and you really need to take a better look at that. All right, number 3. And I have 5 total, so hopefully stick with me. But jobs. When we build a new building, you have a lot of new jobs. Let's say you have 1 million square feet of a data center. Maybe it's 2 million, maybe it's 3 million, it doesn't really matter. A 1 million square foot job, that's going to be, let's say, 4,000 jobs during the construction. This is temporary. Those jobs will go away over time because it's a one-time build. Yes, there's going to be some maintenance, but the maintenance is going to be a fraction of that, maybe 100 jobs to maintain. For maintenance, and that might be permanent from I'm sorry, I'm not the greatest writer, but this might be your permanent maintained jobs from that construction. You might have 100, but 100 jobs is not that much for 1 million square feet. So first off, I get it. This big number of jobs is a huge injection of your community. If you're a community who is struggling for money right now, your economy's not doing so great, your community needs jobs. This is a Band-Aid fix, and you can say, hey, this is going to get us a short-term amount of jobs, but once the construction is done, your community is going to be in the same spot you were before, but now you just have this giant gray box in the middle of your community that has no foot traffic, and you can't do anything else with it. And the number of jobs that this gray box supports, I'm going to say maybe 150 to 200 jobs per 1 million square feet. And that is an overestimation often. What's really, really important is that 150, 200 jobs per 1 million square feet, one, they're highly skilled jobs or high tech. In urban and rural and suburban communities, you may not have those high tech people there. They're going to have to migrate in. You're going to increase demand for housing because of those. They're going to have to come from outside areas, and now your housing demand goes up, which means your housing prices, yes, they go up, but the people that want to live in the community that they've lived in their whole lives, if they don't have a house, it's going to be harder for them to buy a house. It's going to cost more for them to pay rent. The cost of their property taxes are going to go up because the value of houses are going to go up and move on, so on and so forth. But on top of that, 1 million square feet in most other industries can support anywhere from 800 or more jobs, if not way more than that. We could say almost 2,000 jobs for some manufacturing jobs or some factories or commercial businesses or even warehouses. Right now, we're looking at 150 to 200, and that's a pipe dream. This number is likely not going to get hit. 200 jobs, 800 plus jobs is what you're going to see on the low end for most other industries. This 200 jobs, that's not happening. Or this 800 jobs is not happening. Remember, you are getting this number. That's the number of jobs you're getting for the 1 million square foot investment. When if you had put in a factory or you'd put in a warehouse or other commercial jobs, you'd be getting this number, 2,000 or more per 1 million square feet. Now, maybe that's a pipe dream. Maybe it's only 1,500. But again, 10 times the number of jobs for the same amount of square footage. I don't care if they are less skilled jobs. They're not making less money collectively as a community for that many jobs. So you're using a lot of square footage for a very little amount of jobs. If your community has a ton of square footage, or this is property that's on the outskirts of your town, you know what? Maybe it's a good place for a data center, as long as we'll talk about the noise pollution and the other impacts to the environment as well in a second. But maybe it's a good place. If it's not in the middle of your downtown and it's not cutting off your community, it could be worth it. But if it's in the middle of your community, it's near other businesses or other places that might want more foot traffic, or it's meant to be a part of your hustle and bustle downtown, a data center is not fit for this purpose. Usually you want your manufacturers and your factories and your commercial facilities, places where you can have a lot of foot traffic, because then that supports other businesses like food shops, bars, restaurants, grocery stores. Those don't get supported when you don't have anywhere near the same number of jobs you would have with these other industries. So when you zone an area for industrial or commercial use, that zoning usually indicates you're going to have more foot traffic there than you might not. And data centers are, I don't know if it's historically the lowest, but it's a very low amount of jobs per square foot. But I don't want to harp on that too much. I also have a study on this one that highlights this, and I'll link that in the description down below. So let's talk about issue number 4, noise. We can just symbolize it like this, right? The audio waves. Can I draw an ear? We can try. My art skills aren't that important here. It's not a good ear, but it's fine. You'll live. So noise. A lot of these data center developers say, oh, we stay below the required decibel value. First of all, those decibel ratings are typically ratings for somebody who's exposed for 8 hours. A data center runs for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So first off, right out of the gate, the decibel levels that are considered safe for 8 hours, not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Second of all, the most common response is, there's no noise. Again, noise. We're going to put in this one, no, there's not. We're modern. Let's say stuff like, we're modern, we use soundproofing. Why did I put in that modern? And they say we use soundproofing, or the sound of data centers is significantly lower than it was a few years ago. First of all, data centers are a fairly new thing. We have not modernized so much that noise has gone from 85 decibels down to 65 in just a few years. The only way you do that is if you significantly lower the amount of stuff in a data center, you significantly lower the amount of computing, or you overspend a crazy amount of money on soundproofing. And neither of those things are going to happen because both of those things mean that there's less profit to be made. Instead, they just barely squeak below that 70 decibels, I would say most of the time, and they say good enough. So I have quite a few studies here as well as some other things to share in this one, but I think it's really important to understand there is health complications for your heart. There's health complications for your brain. That's a brain, okay? We're just gonna draw a head here. There's health complications for your brain. There's health complications for sleep. There's health complications for anger. People get more irritable and angry when there is a constant 70 decibels at 24/7 in the areas around them. Now, granted, it's often higher than 70 decibels. In fact, if you look up a lot of these counties like Loudoun County or others, you'll have people who live within a couple hundred feet of a data center who will take regular readings, and they'll read 75 decibels, they'll read 80 decibels on a regular day. And that's potentially just when they're really, really big days, when it's really hot out and it costs more electricity and it requires more fans to be running to keep those computers cool. It could also be when they're doing backup generators. But no matter what, me personally, if I have a constant hum in the background of my life, I'm going to go crazy. And in fact, a lot of the people that live near data centers today have to experience that, and they do feel like they're going crazy. And then the last one, I don't want to harp on this one again. I have some studies and papers. I'm going to link in the description below if you want to see it. I keep repeating that. I will for all these points. But please go take a look at those. Don't just take my word for it. I want you to go understand this data. And the last one, housing prices. People are always concerned that the value of their house is going to go down. First of all, very rarely does that happen in communities where their economy is thriving or where things are going well. In fact, there's almost always more demand than there is for supply. So even if some of the houses are less desirable, you have enough people to supplement that demand, to supplement that decrease in desire for some of them, that the price is not going to go down, if not at all, only a little bit. But it's not because of data centers. Data centers are not making housing prices go up. There are no studies that show that the presence of a data center within a certain vicinity of a house makes the house's value go up. There are some studies that show that improved economies make the values of houses go up. However, what I really want to emphasize is having a data center in a community does not mean the value of your houses go up. The value of the houses in some communities go up still in spite of the data center's presence. And there are zero studies to connect a positive correlation between proximity to a data center and the housing value. And in fact, you have so many people who have, I would think you would be very hard pressed to find a single person who likes living near a data center. But there are so many people who are reporting they have to move their family to the basement of their houses. They have to spend $10,000 to $20,000 on soundproofing materials for their windows in order to be able to sleep at nights. They have no more birds in their area because the sounds of the data center are scaring them away. They don't have as much sunlight because the data centers are just these giant brick buildings. There's not as much nature. There's all these things that are negatively polled about data centers. And so when data centers go, oh, when we put in data centers, housing values don't go down, it's a disingenuous statement. It's not because they cannot say data centers increase the value of houses because that would be a straight up lie. But they will say they do not decrease the value of houses because there just haven't been studies done of it yet because data centers are still a new thing. I guarantee you in the next 5 to 10 years, there will be studies that show that despite house values go up, the value of the houses are negatively impacted by data centers' proximity. Maybe if a data center is 3 miles away from you, it won't impact you. Maybe it'll be positive because you're near a place that has better internet. I don't know. But if you're within a close proximity to a data center, your housing value is not going to be as high as you might want it. Anyways, these are the 5 key issues I wanted to talk through. Again, I will link some supporting documents, either white papers, studies, polls, and other articles beneath this video so you can go take a look at those yourself and read through them to support that. But I get so frustrated seeing these data center companies post all this propaganda, and this propaganda is ridiculous. So thanks for listening. I really hope you appreciated this, and you have a good rest of your day.